Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. In this episode I'm going to talk about Copenhagen Roll Write by Queen Games, and I'd like to thank Hot Games the Netherlands for providing this review copy. And as the title suggests, this is the roll and write version of the game Copenhagen by Queen Games. And like in that game, you're also building a facade with Tetris-like shapes, only this time you're writing them down on your pad and you're rolling dice. So let's open up the box, I'll show you what's inside, I'll set up a game, and then I'll explain the rules and give you my final thoughts. Copenhagen Roll and Write by Queen Games. So the box is pretty small and compact, and on the back there's a list of the components, and it's explained in 4 languages. Plays 2 to 4 players, ages 8 and up, in about half an hour. So let's see what we get in the box. So first of all, there's a rule book in several languages, and the rule book is relatively thin. There's not a whole lot of pages. 8 pages of condensedly written rules. So we have that. Then we have 5 dice with different colors on each face, and we have a pad of these Tetris shaped shapes here. The pieces that you will be drawing on your board, they're double-sided and there's plenty of them. And there's another pad with your scoring sheets, so each player gets one of those, and you start crossing off stuff and filling in shapes here, and they are also double-sided. Alright, that's everything that's in the box. Let's explain the rules. To play a game of Copenhagen Roll and Write, you take one of these sheets and put it in the middle of the table, and this will be used by everybody. I like to use the box as a dice tray, and each player takes one of these sheets as well, and only the starting player marks their sheet with a cross over here to indicate that they are the starting player. Whenever you score points, your score is marked by drawing an X on one of these numbers. These are your ability tracks, and the squares of these tracks are filled from left to right by drawing an X inside them. And every time you draw an X in a box that has one of these shapes next to it, you unlock a special ability, which players are able to use on their turn, and I will explain in a bit. This is your building, and players will be drawing shapes that they cross off here into their building, much like you would playing Tetris, so you start at the bottom and you fill it up upwards. And whenever you fill a row or column indicated by the lighter tiles, you unlock one of these coats of arms, and that also gives you a special ability. Now during the game, you will be rolling all 5 of the dice, and after rolling you can sometimes use some of your special abilities, which I will explain in a bit, but then you have to decide which color you're going to use to pick one of these shapes. So in this case, for example, I have 2 blue dots, which means I could choose this shape. Now all the shapes in this column here can be used endlessly, so an unlimited number of times, but these shapes need to be crossed off once you've used them, and that means other players can't use them anymore. Whenever you fill a row on your facade, you can score points. If you fill a row with just circles, you get 2 points, but if there's an X in there, you score 1 point. And the same goes for the vertical lines. If you have an X in there, you score 2 points, and if there's only circles in there vertically, you get 4 points. And you instantly cross those off on your score track. The coat of arms that I just mentioned is also explained here, and it means that whenever you fill a row, and you can cross off that coat of arms, and that means you can either add an extra circle anywhere on your board or cross off 2 X's on any one of these tracks. Now after a player has rolled the dice and picked a shape, they get to draw that shape on their board, and every time you draw a shape, you have to have 1 X in that shape, and the rest are circles. So in this case, it's just a 2 square shape. So that would mean I'd have to cross off 1 X and 1 0, but had I rolled, for example, 3 blue dots, and I could have selected this shape. So let's say that happened, and I want to use that shape and don't have to cross it off because we can use it unlimited times. So for example, I wanted to make that shape over here in the corner. So now I have to cross off 1 X and 2 zeros basically. So I could say, okay, I'll place an X here, a 0 and a 0 here. So the shape must always be placed on the bottom row as far as you can go, and you can rotate a shape as long as it fits in your grid. You cannot mirror a shape. After the active player has drawn their shape and crossed them off, then the other players choose one of the remaining colors, so you take these away, and then the other players can choose either one red or one green ability track on their sheet and cross off one X in this case either the red or the green ability track. A white side is a wild card and can be used for any color. So then the next player takes the dice and rolls them and picks one of the colors. So in this case they might choose yellow with the wild card and then pick this shape, for example, and then draw a similar shape on their board, or they could use one of their special abilities to add to that shape. So let's explain those two bonuses. The plus bonus acts as an extra die of the corresponding color that was rolled, allowing the player to place the next larger shape on their building, but it has to be of the corresponding color. So I can only use a yellow plus to add to a yellow shape. So if that player wanted to make a bigger shape, they would have had to have one of these crossed off already, and if they had, so for example maybe in a previous turn they picked a yellow leftover die from another player, so now they can improve their shape and make it bigger, and then they just cross off this ability, and then they have 4 yellow, and then they can choose one of these, cross it off, and then draw that shape onto their board. And then of course you pick one of those spots to be an X and the rest is a circle. If you use an ability with a star on one of these tracks, you get the corresponding special ability listed here on the left. So the red stars will give you a reroll of any number of dice. And each player starts already with 2 of those unlocked. The blue special ability will let you draw a shape entirely with zeros, so you do not have to mark an X in that shape. The purple ability track allows the player to place a single size 1 tile anywhere where it may be legally drawn and mark it with an X. The green track gives you a color change ability, and then the player may choose as many dice of one color as they like and change it to the face of a single different color of their choice. And finally, the use again ability allows the player to choose a shape that has already been crossed off and draw that again. Important to note is that a player may only use up to 2 unlocked bonuses of the same color on their turn. And if you manage to cross out an entire ability track, you immediately get 2 victory points that you can cross off. Now the game ends at the end of a round in which one player has reached or exceeded 12 victory points. Players will then compare their final scores, and the player with the most points wins the game. In case of a tie, the players count up the empty spaces in their building, and the player with the fewest empty squares is declared the winner. And if there's still a tie, then both players win the game. Important note is that the player is allowed to take a facade shape with fewer squares than the matching colors of the dice they rolled. And if a player rolls dice in all of the same color or with wild cards and uses them all to take a 5 square shape, then that means that after that player has drawn their shape, the other players do not have a color to choose and to strike off of their ability tracks. And that is how you play Copenhagen Roll Write. Let's go to my final thoughts. Okay, so my final thoughts on Copenhagen Roll Write by Queen Games. Let's start with the presentation. So first of all, there's not a whole lot of components in this game. You get 2 blocks with sheets. So you have your sheet with the Tetris shapes, and you have a sheet on which you will be crossing off your shapes on your facade, and your score track and everything, and your special abilities, and that's basically it. So it's very simple. They're double-sided, and you've got your big wooden chunky dice with the different colors on all the sides. So all of that is very clear. It's just very functional. They did try to incorporate, the actual facade here to make it look like you're watching some buildings. But it's just very minor, but it is very handy and intuitive. You do in one glance you can see, okay, this is where you put your shapes, and this is the different colors that you cross off from the dice to get these special abilities, and the abilities are listed here with icons, and your scoring track is on the top. So all of that is very clear and very intuitive and very simple. You get a little booklet of rules in 4 different languages, and it is about 8 pages, so that's fine as well, and it comes in a compact box. So all of that is good. Then the theme, I do like the theme. I mean, it's a roll and write version of the board game, so obviously it's going to have the same theme. And in the board game Copenhagen, you're actually building these little Tetris tiles on your tableau, and you're actually making that facade, and they have windows on them and everything. So that to me feels very thematic and nice, and this less so, but because it is a roll and write of that board game, it obviously will have the same theme with the buildings, and it works just fine. It's just not that important for this game, but I don't feel it has to be for a quick roll and write. I don't really care about the theme that much, and this fits, so it does the job. Then the gameplay is quick, it's simple, it is a low complexity game. It does need a bit of explaining though, because there are some rules that you really need to know well. For example, when can I use these abilities, and I had to look some things up at first. The first time I played it actually wasn't clear to me that, for example, the red ability is only re-rolling your dice, and the blue ability is only that you can put circles and no crosses, so they correspond. And it's logical because they're next to each other, but because of the colored banner here, the stones over there, I thought these are your 5 special actions, and whenever you cross out a star, you can use them anywhere, but that's not the case. So there's a couple of little rules that you do need to read and explain well in order to get everything that's in this game. But after one playthrough, you'll get it. It's not that complex. So it plays fast as well. It says 30 minutes on the box, but I'd say sooner, like 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the number of players you're playing with. If you're playing this with 2, it's over very quickly. If you're playing it with 4, yes, sure, it can take up to 30 minutes, perhaps. So it does play well with 2, 3, and 4 players. I personally found it to be more fun with more players, because then there's more going on. There's a little bit more pressure to get to those 12 points first. And yeah, and because you've got basically 3 turns that you're not adding to your facade, you get to cross off more of your special actions, so you will have more special actions to spend. So with more people, you got more options, basically. So that's why I like it better with more people. But it does work just fine with 2 people playing, but you'll have less abilities that you can use and cross off. It'll maybe take a little longer for you to, fill up your facade or to reach those 12 points. There's one downside to having 4 players though, is that when you're not the active player, you basically don't have anything to do. You're just waiting your turn, and all you have to do is pick one of the remaining dice that weren't used and cross off that color. So there's no choices to be made there. You basically, sometimes you don't even have a choice. There's just one color left, or there's no color left, and you can't cross off anything. So it's just waiting your turn, crossing off some colors here, and that's it. Then the replayability, I'd say the replayability is very good, is high. Even, if you run out of leaflets, if you run through this entire stack, then you could simply laminate 4 of these, and they're double-sided even. But then, you just laminate 4 of these and a couple of these, and you could play this indefinitely. But I would say that your interest in the game will probably run out before you reach the end of this, so there's not really a need. You get plenty of these. You can play this for a very, very long time. And usually, honestly, when you've got some games in your collection that you enjoy, but they're not your best games, then you'll probably, just end up selling them after I mean, a maximum of what, 10 plays? Now this is a quick game, so you can play this a lot more, but then still at some point you're gonna sell it and you'll be halfway maybe max through this notes pad and that's it. So if you're really a fan of this, you can play it indefinitely and laminate some of these sheets. And if you're not, no worries there. I mean, it's an okay game. It has a quick playthrough, so you can replay it several times in one session. It's a nice filler. Another thing that I need to mention is the language independency, which I think is really good. The game comes with the rules in 4 different languages, but all of these sheets and everything you do is fully language independent because it uses icons, and once you know what the icons mean, you can play this with anyone. So that is a big plus for me. So to conclude, for me personally, I enjoyed this game. It's a fun, light, lunchtime game. It's a filler game. Do I like it better than the board game? I don't know. I personally think the board game is a little bit more fun because of the actual tiles you're putting down on the board. It's more of a tactile thing, I think. I do like that in this game, once somebody reaches the 12 victory points, then you get to play out the round. So if that player wasn't was the first player, then the other players do get another turn, which I believe was different in the board game. But otherwise, yeah, sure, it's a nice game. It's not the best roll and write I have ever played, but I did enjoy it. I would give it a thumbs up, and that is Copenhagen Roll and Write by Queen Games, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon to get a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.